Hi, Mark Gilbert here. Thanks for clicking in. For the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about looking at life spiritually. Like all our videos here, this is designed to give you tools and ideas to assist with our spiritual evolution. Now, if you find this helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It lets YouTube know you like what we're doing. So when we talk about looking at life spiritually, one of the first things we need to consider is, what do we mean by the word spiritually? I think we all know what we mean by looking at life. We have a lens by which we look out at everything and see things and absorb it and take it into our being. But do we do that in a spiritual way? I think for most of us, we get so stuck and mired in this physical nature and what's going on out there in the world that we tend not to look at stuff spiritually. We look at it probably materialistically for the most part. So when we look at something being spiritual, what do we mean? Well, I have a whole video, and the title on the screen is the key one I'd recommend that you look at. But in that video, I boil it down to a key definition that I got from a couple of authors where they defined spirituality or being spiritual as experiencing our true connectedness to all that exists. Experiencing our true connectedness to all that exists. Now, in that and in other definitions you might find out on the internet, I've always seen two key characteristics in being spiritual or spirituality. One is this sense of connection, that we're connected to things outside of ourselves, so that it's drawing us away from this sense of being a distinct individual that's separate and apart from the rest of life. So it's that unity or that connection to something greater. And it's that greater that's the second piece. There's an expansiveness to it because we tend to look at our lives as rather small and as these individuals. But when we get into looking at things spiritually, there's an expansive nature where we move beyond this physical form and this small body, and where we think maybe our mind is simply the thoughts that are within the head of this skull. So those are the two key characteristics that I think are essential when we're looking at something spiritual. Again, the definition: experiencing our true connectedness to all that exists. So to boil that down in simple terms, the question is, when we look out at life, are we looking at it that we are separated apart from everything, or are we looking at it that we're united and connected to everything? Which way are you looking at it? For most of us, we're probably floating back and forth, and we tend to have a tendency to look at it one way or the other. Many of us may be down on the very far end of the continuum where everything is separate and apart, and a few of us may be out in the area where we're looking at things very united. But I would say the most of us are fluctuating in the middle of that continuum, where many times we're stuck in separation, and occasionally we're over here in a sense of unity. Now, what are the characteristics of separation? Well, some of the key characteristics for me is that we see ourselves as these distinct entities that are living apart from everything. And what that means for us is that we're in competition with the rest of stuff. That we see other people and life out there as something to compete with. That we feel like, that we have evolved through a physical form that has the survival of the fittest. And survival of the fittest means that we have to compete and win at all costs. Hence, there's a win-lose mentality that comes in separation thinking. And in that is an okayness with harming others. We may not necessarily be wanting to harm others, but we may be okay with it as long as we get our needs met. We put ourselves first. And that harming others can bend over into talking about the world as well, that we're okay with harming this physical environment and this planet, again, as long as that our sense of self is winning at all cost. And so being okay with harming is a sense, because if we're in a sense of unity, we know that harming others or harming the planet is ultimately harming ourselves as well. One other thing that's characteristic of a sense of separation is that our sense of meaning comes from winning and gathering and accumulating things, accumulating wealth, accumulating power, accumulating knowledge. There is a great sense that as this entity that's bumping around in this world, I want to gather things to me. And so my meaning comes from either getting more stuff or getting more knowledge. And so there is that accumulation aspect to meaning. Although at some point in our evolution, I really feel like that meaning begins to it transcend that we realize that accumulating wealth and power and knowledge and so forth, it doesn't necessarily give our lives the true meaning that we're seeking. And the final thing that I've noticed about separation thinking is that it really encourages a sense of fear. The whole starts with the competition with the other out there, and myself are in competition, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose. I'm afraid that you're going to disconnect me from the society, that I'm going to be disowned and ostracized in some way. I fear your judgment and fear your thoughts when I'm in separation thinking. There are so many other fears, but all of our fears come down to there is something in me as separate apart from that thing out there that is possibly going to harm me. Whether it's real or imagined is another story. But there is a fear that is based when we're looking at life from a sense of separation. However, when we flip the coin over and we look at life from a sense of unity, what are the characteristics of that? Well, first off, if I know that I am connected to you and you're connected to me, that everything in this life is ultimately at some base level is all connected, then life becomes not about competition, but more about cooperation. That I seek areas of mutual support where I can support you because in supporting you, it is supporting me because we are one. Okay, it breaks down the sense of win-loss competition and moves us to a sense of win-win, that I seek a solution that is beneficial for both of us. In fact, it's beneficial for the greater system as a whole, and I often refer to win-win-win solutions that we might seek when we get into unity thinking. Ultimately in this is, and I mentioned it previously, is a sense of doing no harm, because once we know we're all united and connected, I know that harming you is harming me. Now, that's not to say that we can't have healthy boundaries, and if you're in separation thinking and you're in something that feels okay with harming me, I have perfectly all the rights in the world to step up and to keep you from doing that, whether it's walking away from you or putting up appropriate barriers. So doing no harm doesn't mean allowing others to run over me. Also in the sense of unity thinking is that we see our lives as being bigger than this individual. That it's not simply about my needs being met, but it's the needs of the whole being met. And there is this greater sense of time and a greater sense of the eternal. In fact, I see ourselves in our lives as being beyond this physical form, that my life is a continuous expression that started before I came into this world and continues beyond this world. And I'm united with the non-material world, that this is just a place where I am moving through and learning and having experiences in this time. So seeing life spiritually has this greater vision that sees things from a higher vantage point and a longer time frame, in fact, outside of the sense of time. And also looking at life spiritually gives life a greater meaning. That we're not stuck in seeing the meaning from competition and gathering wealth and power and so forth. But all of a sudden we can look back and see the interplay of everything, and that says, I see how things fit together. And by the very nature that we're having those aha moments where things are fitting together, they really give us a greater sense of the meaning of what it is that we're doing here in this existence at this time. And finally, I would mention that when we're thinking and seeing life spiritually, that it dissipates the fear. Because if my fear is based on being separate and apart, then once I recognize at the true level of my being that we're all one, that I don't have to worry about what you're thinking or what you're going to do, because I know ultimately in the great scheme of things, everything is going to be okay. And that a lot of the fears that I have, my normal, what we call normal fears, are really just those kinds of things that are holding us back, and they're mired in the separation and in fear-based disunity, as we say. So that brings us to the greater question now, is if we really want to move into a place of looking at life spiritually, then the question is, how do we go about doing this? And like all things, it begins in our consciousness. It begins with our setting an intention that we wish to look at life spiritually. We can sit back and look and observe our lives and say, well, I can see that in some cases I'm looking at it spiritually. In many cases, I'm looking at it from a sense of separation. How do I move on that continuum from that sense of separation to more experiencing and living on the continuum in a sense of unity? What can I do that? And it begins by setting the intention to move down the continuum and to do it more routinely. And once we set that intention, then we follow it up. Follow it up with a lot of things like affirmations, affirming that every day I am seeing life more from a sense of unity. And words like that that can grow our consciousness. So the more that we can say those affirmations, use affirmative prayer, and other techniques to shift our consciousness to seeing and looking at life from a sense of unity, the more we're going to see things spiritually. That's so true. Another thing that we can do is to visualize that. A lot of law of attraction techniques involve creating some sort of visualization. Well, I would invite you to start your day by sitting down and in your meditation, visualizing yourself as being united to all that is. Visualizing yourself as being a spiritual being who transcends these time and material space. And by spending some time in visualizations, and then moving through the world of form, you will then have more of that vision guiding you in what you do and how you react and act within the world of form. Visualize not only that you are connected to all that is, but visualize that eternal being nature of yourself. Visualize yourself as transcending this limited time during which you as this individual human is spending here on earth. I mentioned meditation. Meditation is a great key for stepping out of the world of form and into the world of the non-material. And the more we can meditate and tap into that divine flow that's moving through us through a meditative state, it will also build a sense of a spiritual way of looking at life. The next thing I would suggest is joy. Bring more joy into your life. Bring more happiness and fun into your life. You know, we tend to take things way too damn seriously. We go through life thinking, that I've got to be this spiritual, pious being or whatever. I would invite you to let go of that and to see this life and this time that you're moving through this experience as being a time to experience joy. What brings you joy in your life and does no harm to others? And so if you can find those things that are bringing you joy, have joy. Just know that joy is coming to you every day. Look out and see this life as a game to play and an experience to move through that's fun. Life can be fun if we just stop taking it so damn serious. Coupled with that is looking out and just recognizing that so many other people are stuck in that sense of separation. So that opens us to hearts of kindness, that we recognize that you may be struggling and feeling bad, but I don't have to give that back to you. I can act with kindness towards you, with love towards you. In fact, if I know that you and I are one, would I not want to treat you as if I would want to be treated? Back to the golden rule, which I do a video on recently. But the more that we can act from a sense of care and concern for our fellow humans, treating them as we wish to be treated, to loving them like we want to be loved, is a greater and greater way of living spiritually and looking at life spiritually. I would also encourage us to study. Find inspirational words that can remind you every day. Study the great masters and teachers. Find a teacher. Find someone who can give you guidance. Also be a teacher. We're teachers to many people, and we also all have teachers. So even the greatest teachers we can point to were taught by others. And so that whole support network is a very important aspect of looking at life spiritually. In fact, surround yourself with people who are going to support you being on the spiritual path and looking at life spiritually. There's so many times we can be around people just because their habits of people we've known for many years, and they're stuck in the sense of separation. They're naysayers. They're always stuck in negativity and saying negative things. I'd encourage you to Limit your time. Turn the dial down on spending time with people who are bringing negativity into your life, and people who focus on competition and the sense of what's wrong, and find people who inspire you and support you in your spiritual growth, and turn the dial up on spending more time with them. Develop a support network that is around you. The more you can do that, the more this is going to be easier for you. Also, recognize that every day is a moment of choices. You've got a choice in every moment. You can screw up one moment where you didn't look at life spiritually. You got stuck in separation. You got stuck into negativity, going down the path of whining and complaining with somebody. But recognize that every moment is a new choice, that you can choose again every moment. Have a new thought every moment to be a greater and higher vision of yourself, to look out and see things better. And just know that every moment is a chance for a new choice, And in those choices, always choose the greater good. Ask what would be good not only for myself in this moment, but what would be good for the greater good of all. Because if we're looking at life spiritually and knowing that everything is connected, then we want to make choices and follow it up with words and deeds that are serving the greater good of all. Next thing up, I would suggest that you observe life. You know, there's too many times we just get into reactive mode, and I would invite you that if you're in reacting to stuff going on in life, just to sit back and observe it. Observe what is floating by in your existence this day. And as you observe it, don't feel like you've got to jump in and respond. Don't feel like you've got to jump in and act. But look at it and say, how is this connected? How is this serving me? How are these experiences in my life reinforcing within me the sense that everything is connected? Use the experiences in your life as a touchstone, not to take you into separation, but to take you back to a recognition that all is one. Looking back on my list now, what else is next? As you're observing life, recognize that all is sacred. Everything in this planet, every person is sacred, and they're worthy of respect and dignity, just as you are. Yes, yeah. And tied to that is developing a sense of wonder. We are in this wondrous, glorious world right now with all these great experiences that are just floating around us, and things are just magnificent, but we tend to take them for granted. I mean, you can take things that are somewhat mundane, like texting and cell phones and the internet, and all of a sudden they're just a part of the background of your life, but you can step back and look at them with wonder and say, look at how this technology has developed. But also look at the planet. Look at the very nature that we are on this earth in this Goldilocks condition with just the right conditions to develop life and for us to evolve here. That is so wonderful and wondrous. But do we see it that way? Everything in our life can inspire wonder if we stop and consider it. Yeah. In that is a sense of self-awareness, awareness of where you are, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. The more you can develop a sense of self-awareness, the more you can move to seeing life through a spiritual lens. I also invite you to acknowledge that, yes, you have got rational thoughts, but also develop your intuition. Develop your intuitive skills and let them support your rational thoughts, so that when you're making those choices in day-to-day moments, you're doing so with a sense of what rationally seems right, but what intuitively am I being guided to do? And listen to both voices coming up in you. That's another way to see life spiritually. Also, embrace the newness. You know, we can get stuck in the same old every day, getting this little comfort zone of our lives, and we don't want to get outside that comfort zone. I invite you to bring newness into your life. Go a different route to work today. Meet somebody or talk to somebody that you haven't talked to before. Challenge yourself every day to find something that you've never done before and do it, and have that new experience. I love traveling. Traveling is a great way of meeting new people, going new places, and experiencing new things. But you need to step into the unknown, because the more you step into the unknown, the more you taste this glorious, wondrous nature of this earth, the experience we're moving through. And the more you recognize how beautifully spiritually all of this is, that you're part of this greater expansive nature that we're talking about. Finally, give to others. Be of service. When we're connected to all, we want to give to all. Recognize that life and the flow of giving and receiving are this one circulus thing where when I give to you and you receive, I'm actually giving to me in a sense because we're all one. And when you give to me and I receive, it's giving back to you. So giving and receiving is this great flow. And just let's get into the flow. And instead of hoarding stuff, which is the old materialistic separate way of looking at things, see that in the sense of unity, we want to keep that circulation and flow going. It's so important. And finally, in all of this, is to embrace your expansiveness. See yourself as being beyond this physical form and this individual lifetime, and embrace the greater nature of you being connected to everything it is. One thing that's wonderful to do is you can walk down the street and say, that is me, I am that. I'm connected to that. We're both God. Have a little phrase that you can say that connects you in that moment when you're looking out at life, that reminds you you are connected to the things that are around you. And when you do that, you can truly develop a spiritual way of looking at life. Anyway, I've gone through very fast a long laundry list of things or ways in which you can look at life spiritually. You might want to stop, go back, rewind the video, go through that list again because I did it really fast, jot down some notes. Do a handful of them. You don't have to do them all, but do many of them. And the more you do, the more you're going to begin looking at life spiritually, and the more your life is going to give you more meaning, more pleasure, and reduce fear. What are some of the techniques you've found that you use to look at life spiritually? Leave me a comment below and let me know. Also, if you have a topic for a future video, be sure to send me an email at the email address that's on your screen. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Hey, one more quick thing. I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. The link is down there on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Also, there's a related video you might want to watch. It's right next to my face. And if you like this video, be sure to click like and leave me a comment on YouTube. Thanks.